But this is basically the only criticism you're going to get of so-called Pat socks, right? Now, I want to draw your attention to Von Wenon's drawing, right? Because this is really the aesthetic of so-called socialist patriotism in America. Now, when you look at this drawing, do you see a utopia? Actually, a lot of people see this as very dystopian, and for good reason. It's not. There's nothing utopian about this. There's nothing wholesome about this. This doesn't remind me of Barney the dinosaur, or a mother's tweet, or like some wholesome vista. I mean, compare this to that yogurt commercial, right? Yogurt solar funk, whatever that fuck. Yeah, this one. So look at this commercial. Holy fuck. Look at this commercial. Now, this is wholesome. This does remind you of the wholesome mother's teeth or whatever, right?
Dear Alice.
Wholesome. It's everything. It's very childlike, cartoon-like. It's very wholesome, right?
This is just dirt.
Now, this is what most leftists find acceptable, is like the realization of your ideology. This is it, right? Like, oh, it's so nice and wholesome. It reminds, it's pacifying and childlike. It's that childlike, wonder, right? And then compare that to this. It's like, you just compare these, right? One, you see a world with flaws in this, don't you? I mean, it's a world with flaws. It has some of the buildings from the past. These are new things are even still being constructed. It's not even finished yet. It literally isn't wholesome, because this is depicting a world that's still being built. It's not even like wholesome, and it's just a regular world where people are still going about their business as normal people, and it's actually kind of ordinary. And then you do see symbols, so a lot of people are like, this is just our reality with red flags, right? And it was very intentional that I chose this image to be Von Wenon, actually his art in general, as the aesthetic of a socialist realism in the 21st century, people's punk, right? So, now why is that though? Because socialist patriotism is actually not an ideology. I want you to repeat after me, because some of you even make the mistake of not understanding this. Patriotic socialism is not an ideology. Patriotic socialism is a new relationship between ideology and reality. It's not an ideology. We are not reflexively creating the idea of being patriotic. Patriotism for us refers to the fact that the ideology of socialism comes from the soil of the people, and that the people are national in form. Okay? It is not an ideology. It's a new form of realism, is what patriotic socialism is. Again, repeat after me. Patriotic socialism is not an ideology. We're not beginning with a blank canvas and saying, in our ideal world, we would be patriotic Americans. We're saying that we don't begin with a blank canvas, and that an ideology has to draw from reality and material reality, right? An ideology has to draw from the soil of the people as they are, and the people are national in form, right? It is not an ideology, okay? In an ideology, you have a blank canvas. So I'll show you what an ideology looks like, right? An ideology is a blank canvas. And then on this blank canvas, you just draw whatever you want. And then, there's furry porn and whatever you want, and all your fantasies are realized. But the whole point of so-called patriotic socialism is you don't begin with this blank canvas, right? We are inheriting reality in a certain type of way. And socialism or communism, scientific socialism specifically, is about discerning how, from the very core of material reality itself, you will find a new mode of production emerging. And that mode of production is socialism. That is the essence of scientific socialism. You don't create a construct and set that against the world. You discern within the tendencies of the world itself the future, right? there's something that a lot of Marxists have dropped, which was the inevitability of socialism. And why do they not believe in the inevitability of socialism? Because they think that means this doesn't necessitate the party form or subjectivity or ideology, and that we can just sit on our couch and eat hot chips and wait for it to happen, right? When in reality, the dialectic of freedom and necessity shows, and also even like Asian religions like Buddhism or whatever will show you that, or even Christian predestination or Islamic predestination will show you that destiny, fate, not the streamer, but fate, right? Fate and human will are not at odds with each other. The fullest expression of human will realizes necessity and destiny, not the streamer, okay? So this is not an ideology. This is a form of realism. I want you guys to remember, what is the aesthetic of Marxism-Leninism? What is the official aesthetic of Marxism-Leninism? Do any of you guys know what it's called? Do you know what it's called, though, historically? Yeah, it's called socialist realism. It's called socialist realism, right? So, patriotic socialism is a form of realism, okay? It's a form of realism. It's not about creating an ideology where we celebrate America as a perfect idea. You know, I see a lot of you fail arguing this. A lot of you will say something like, look, the idea of America is flawed, but it also has good, right? It's an idea with flaws, but there's also good and there's nuance, and you're approaching it the wrong way, okay? America is not an idea. Joe Biden has said that before, by the way. He said, America's an idea. It's the only country in the world that's an idea. We're saying it's not an idea. America is a material reality, right? And patriotic socialism is about understanding the material basis of the socialist ideology. What is the material basis of ideology? Material basis of ideology is national in reality, civilizational. And keep in mind, I'm saying ideology. So the material basis of politics is obviously lies in class relations. But what is the material basis of ideology? Material basis of ideology is civilizational and national, right? And why? Because ideologies require institutions to realize themselves. Those institutions themselves are premised by what? People, right? But people are not blank slate, tabula rasa. People have a character. They have a way of life. And nations and civilizations and states approximate and give expression to those. Okay? What I want you guys to understand, most of all, okay, is that the confusion lies in the idealist view that countries and states and nations are ideas, and that everyone's a blank slate with which to be molded by ideologies, and that a country like America is just another ideology with which people are molded into. Everyone's a blank slate with no material character, no subconscious, no unconscious, no material reality, but a completely blank slate for an ideology to mold and impose itself upon, right? We know that's not true. I mean, according to Marxism, according to dialectical materialism, there is a dialectic of form. Form is not just one thing that is imposed upon content. Forms have history. Forms are themselves real and, in a sense, material, right? That's why it's called dialectical materialism. Now, in undialectical materialism, you just have content, which means just one form. Content and form are the same. The whole point of dialectical materialism is that content and form are not the same, which means there's a living relationship between form and content, right? There are forms that we inherit from history that are material. They're real. They're not just ideas, or they're not just thoughts or ideologies. They're actual material forms, right? All nations and countries and states describe are specific material forms. America is a material form. That material form is described as the United States. Its symbol is the flag of the United States. Its constitution represents that material form, and so on, right? The form is material. Now, Jacques Lacan, was the first to give expression to a word for a material form. Because before Lacan, there is an assumption in Western thought, which is why Westerners have never understood, by the way, Marxism, Leninism. There's an assumption in Western thought that forms are ideas and content refers to the real material thing, right? So the form is the idea, the Platonic idea. The content is the real material thing. What Lacan discovers, thank you, DJ. What Lacan discovers is that there are material forms. And he calls these material forms symptoms. Symptoms. And why does he call it a symptom? Because for Lacan, upon inquiring into material reality, you are met with a pattern of some kind. The same thing keeps disclosing itself to you. The same symptom. Fundamental symptom. For Lacan, that symptom represents an imminent material limitation. And in this way, there are symptoms, material forms in reality. So, America as a country is a symptom. You can dislike the American flag. You can keep pointing out the inconsistencies of some strawman American ideology of a perfect country with no flaws and no genocide of indigenous people. But that symptom is real. That symptom that American flag and American patriotism merely gives expression to is a real symptom. And it's a material symptom. It's not defined by morality. It's not defined by how oppressed people are or how unjust things are. It is a real fundamental symptom, a real limitation of what the American people are and how they are, right? Their way of life. These are all material things. You can keep attacking the ideology of America or the idea of America, right? But how do you give expression to the symptom of America, right? Because despite your criticism, the symptoms keep coming back, right? So this is what socialist patriotism is. This is what patriotic socialism is. It is not an ideology. It is a way of reconciling the ideology of socialism, scientific socialism, by the way, which is a realist ideology, a scientific ideology, with the symptom of the patria, right? The patria being the country of America. That is patriotic socialism, not an ideology, a form of realism. Okay? So you guys need to not fall into their traps. When they point out that the founding fathers did bad shit, they are not pointing out anything that's relevant. When they point out that America was founded on stolen land, it's not that they're wrong or that, well, you're neglecting how America was also progressive in many ways. That's just not relevant, okay? It's just not relevant to what patriotic socialists are saying. Pointing out the progressive legacy of America, again, is not fucking relevant. You are playing their game and falling into their trap by focusing on the ideological aspect. But no one is addressing the actual material aspect, okay? Patriotic socialism is about materialism. It's about socialist realism. It is in no way about whether America can be redeemed or not. It's not that. It has nothing to do with that, okay? You're framing everything in moral terms when you do that, okay? It's about whether America is materially real or not. And that's why people who argue America is just not materially real will be arguing with me. If you want to argue with me about this, don't tell me that America's stolen land or that America's chauvinist and imperialist and all this kind of shit and white supremacist and a genocide of indigenous people. You're not actually saying anything relevant. If you want to argue with me about patriotic socialism, then convince me that America isn't a real material thing. Say America is just a state apparatus held up by force, and that the minute this apparatus crumbles, there is no imminent material feature or character of the American people that would reproduce America. America is purely upheld by the superstructure. There's no material reality of America, no material form of America. If you can successfully argue that case, you can completely demolish my position, right? I just don't think you can successfully advocate that. And why? Because while I do agree that American civilization is not complete, right? What I consider to be the ultimate cunning of history and my prophetic insight, right, if you will, my shtick, is that communists, specifically, it is the destiny of America to realize itself materially through communism. Communism coming to America is chickens coming home to roost. For me, the significance of communism, for America specifically, is completing the mythological violence that is the foundation of a material civilization. That, to me, is the meaning of communism in America. Yes, America. So there's two things. Is America materially real? Is America a symptom? Yes and no. No, because it is inexorably entwined with the state, right? But also yes, because it is begging, it is in its inner striving materially, it is awaiting the material. America is like an ailing symptom that wants to be recognized. It hasn't been recognized yet. Because this state is part of material reality. And by the state, for example, I don't refer to only to the current government. I'm talking about the alienation posed by the central government to the population that uniquely defines America. Like, we don't have a civilization in America. We have the largest prison population of anywhere in the world because we don't have a civilization. We have a people and a completely alien state, and the only interaction between the people and the state takes the form, basically, of criminalizing the people, right? If you're going to come to blows with the state, it's because you're going to be locked up and put in prison. Otherwise, you keep sabotaging. The state's here, the people are here. Leave each other alone. If the state comes after you, it's because you're in fucking trouble, right? We don't have a civilization. Why? Because a civilization mediates the relationship between a people and a state. So in a civilization, for example, the people can, in a hands-off way, reproduce the essence of the state from below, right? In a civilization, there's this kind of meeting point between people and state where there's this kind of synthesis or harmony between them, right? That's what it means for us to be a civilization. And we don't have that in this country, right? So to me, the paradox is that communism is an decisive part of the chapter of the story of America, of the emergence of an American civilization here in the United States. Now, Mexico has a civilization. Latin America, there's a civilization. But here, United States, what is our country called? It's called the United States of America. It's not a completed project. It's not complete, okay? It's not complete. It's just called the United States of America. Here we are on this new world, this new continent. It's not new, Hans. Indigenous people were here first. Shut the fuck up, because it is new from the vantage point of the old world, from which the majority of inhabitants here are. So yes, it is new, okay? It's a new world, America. We call it America. We don't call it Turtle Island. Even indigenous people don't call it fucking Turtle Island. We call it America. Okay? And we just have a United States of America. And our Constitution was very simple. What our founding fathers created was actually extremely simple. I'm talking about what they created. What they inherited was slavery and genocide of indigenous, whatever. It's not relevant. That's from history. But what did they actually create? They created something which is very simple and ambiguous, right? They created a very specific type of state, right? Which in no way was uniquely defined by the cruelties and excesses of European colonialism. I mean, that came from Europe. We did inherit a lot from Europe. We did. But that's not the essence of what America is, materially speaking. And that's what socialists and communists need to actually get to the business of understanding. What is America in the material sense? Not in the moral sense. In the material sense, what is America? What is this country? What is it, right? So yes, we need to understand that, again, repeat after me, guys. What's the ultimate takeaway? What do I want you to take away from this and keep in your head? What do I want you to take away? There you go. Audacity got it. Danky Kane got it. That's what I want you to take away. Patriotic socialism is not an ideology. It is not an ideology. We already have the ideology of Marxism, Leninism, and scientific socialism. The patriotism part doesn't come from ideology. It comes from a scientific relationship to reality. It's a form of realism, okay? It's a sober form of reconciled realism, okay? It's realism. That's where it comes from, okay? And that's where we're coming from. Okay? I cannot hammer that point home enough. Can you explain realism? Sure. So, when you have art or ideology, or philosophy even, right? You kind of contradict reality in some kind of way, right? Like if I have an idea, well, what's the relationship to the real thing? Well, all realism basically means is an idea or a piece of art, for example, or an aesthetic, something you create as a human being that is at the same time in contradiction with material reality, tries to give the best representation and best, not only representation, but best expression to material reality. Right? How can we best express reality through a medium that is not immediately reality, right? For example, here's reality and here's my idea of reality, right? A realist wants their idea of reality to give the best expression to reality possible. So that's what realism means, right? Is Impressionism a form of realism? Yeah, it is. It's probably the first form of realism. It's the first form of realism. Socialist realism is an derivative of Impressionism, by the way. Actually, Impressionism is the first form of socialist realism, is what I would say. What about Eurasianism? Is that more like a geopolitical part? Eurasianism is about the substance, right? American patriotism is not, we have a missing substance, right? So Eurasianism is our substance.